here with, and I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Frank Castablanco. I'm Director of Cardiac Emergencies for Mission Health.
Okay, and you can understand how that feeds into what we're talking about here in this episode. Cardiac emergencies. We've talked to Glenn. You've heard from some others who've had cardiac emergencies, and you are firsthand, front line on what you see. So the first thing I want to talk about is, what do you see coming in here to Mission as cardiac emergencies? Are there a few? Are there a lot?
There's about 500 a year, at least, in terms of heart attacks of people coming into Mission, both locally from Buncombe County and from the region. So we are the center for Western North Carolina to take care of people who have any types of heart attacks, any kind of cardiac arrests, and any other cardiac emergencies.
Yeah, and when somebody at home, I know if I were watching this at home, I would say, well, a cardiac emergency. What is that?
Sure, it has a lot of different meanings. Basically anything heart related, so it could be a heart attack, it could be if your heart goes into a rhythm that's called an arrhythmia, which is very irregular and you get short of breath. It could be a cardiac arrest when your heart literally just stops and you collapse to the ground.
Yeah.
So a lot of different aspects we cover.
And those folks can come in here. I know we've talked to one fellow who was driven here. A lot of people, I think, try to drive themselves here, but they can also come here by ambulance.
They definitely need to, because our emergency department sees over 100,000 people a year. So if you call 911, they not only can activate the system and get all the doctors and nurses and technicians who would take care of you into the hospital as you're coming in, but they could also kind of bypass the system a little bit because they know what's going on. These paramedics are highly trained. They know how to diagnose heart attacks. They know how to help you if you're having a cardiac arrest, as well as lots of other emergencies.
That is key. I want to make sure that people have heard that. Over 100,000 people coming through the ER a year. That's a lot.
It is a lot.
So if you think, I think I'm having a heart issue of whatever kind, and you decide to drive yourself, number one, you may not make it, but two, you're going to feed into that system.
I mean, there's 10 people ahead of you sometimes. Yeah. It's very busy, and they're great at taking care of people. There's nurses in the waiting room so that if a patient comes in and they're in clear distress, they can triage them and get them to the back quickly. But you're right, a lot of people don't make it to the hospital because if you're having a heart attack, one of the major arteries in your heart is blocked. And that could lead to your heart literally stopping and going into a cardiac arrest or going into a rhythm where it's not pumping any blood. And we often hear of too many people who say, no, it's just indigestion, or no, can you just drive me? They don't make it. And so we want to try to avoid that. Right,
and I know we violated that. I know we've talked to Glenn who said he got driven here, that they violated that. I know when I brought my husband here with his episode, we drove here. Hindsight tells me might not have been a smart thing, but we were very lucky and we made it and we're very well taken care of quickly through the ER. However, when I hear you say we could have called 911 and they could have started the process, it's almost like a fast pass.
It is like a fast pass, if you would.
Yeah.
You know, because especially if it is something that's life or death, it's literally minutes. And so the biggest part, the first part, is understanding the signs and symptoms. Right. Obviously, the crushing chest pain, that's clear first and foremost, but men present differently than women do. And men will have that crushing chest pain where they have to grab their chest, and they may look pale, they may look diaphoretic, they may get nauseous, short of breath. There's all these symptoms. Sometimes you have pain in one or both of the arms.
Right.
Now, women can present with this, but they often don't, and that's the tricky part. Women's signs are a little bit different. Theirs may be shortness of breath only, or they may be back pain, or even fatigue, and that's the number one differentiating symptom.
And we women are tired all the time anyway.
Sure, and honestly, women are too busy taking care of everyone in their family. They don't think of themselves. They're like, oh, it's just a little indigestion. I'm just going to sit down and it'll be okay.
That's right.
And as a result, more women ultimately do wind up dying. And that's something that we can help by just recognizing this and encouraging each other. If you're having these signs and symptoms, please call someone, call 911, let somebody know, because oftentimes we don't tell.
Right. And they've just waited. And some of those symptoms are they're not huge. And I know when Glenn told us that it did hit him all of a sudden, and he had all the symptoms all of a sudden. But sometimes they come on just a little bit at a time.
They do, and your body will warn you.
Right.
And your body will warn you months ahead of time. You just have to pay attention to it sometimes.
Yep. Listen to your body.
Yeah, you definitely have to listen to your body. And then if you take it a step back, a little bit has to do with prevention. You know, in some cases, a lot of it has to do with prevention.
That's what I want to talk about, because we've seen these guys who fortunately have had the heart episodes. They've come through it. The mission has taken very good care of them and now have them in heart path. And what they're seeing is, I wish I had known and done these things before the episode.
Sure.
Do you see a lot of that?
We're trying to, we're trying to set up systems, health screenings, get information out to people as much as we can so that they're aware of what to do.
They take it seriously.
Right, and understand that this is a life or death situation, and that unfortunately people are having heart attacks and other cardiac emergencies at a much younger age. We used to think, oh, I'm in my 70s or 80s, maybe then I'll get a heart attack. We're seeing people in their 30s now, and that's a huge change that we don't like. That's something that's not good.
Now tell the folks at home what, we've been through it. I know my husband's been through it. I know exactly, I could track exactly what you were saying with the stent and the cath lab and all that is. Tell the folks at home, what is a stent and what is the cath lab?
Sure. So the cath lab is a specialized lab that literally is not an operating room, because they don't actually do surgery on the patient. But the way that they could get inside of their heart is by inserting a catheter into their femoral artery, so into that artery that's right by your hip there. They insert a catheter, goes all the way up to the top of your heart. They shoot a little bit of dye, and they see where that dye goes, and more importantly, where it doesn't go, because that part is blocked. So once they see where that is, that's exactly where they have to go in and fix. So they slide in another catheter with a balloon, and they inflate the balloon to basically compress that blockage, which is usually made up of that cholesterol that we were talking about.
Right.
So they compress that, and they slide in a metal stent. And a stent is like the spring of a pen. If you remember clicking, that's what it looks like. It's just like that, only much smaller, much more advanced.
Yeah.
And they open it up, and it
Just
locks
kinda-
open.
Yeah.
And so now your artery went from being 90 to 100% blocked to being fully open. And blood is going to the rest of that part of the heart that was blocked, and so that part of the heart is now saved. If we don't get the patient in time, if the patient waits and doesn't come in, and that part of the heart doesn't get that blood flow, then that part could die, and that's when you have a different quality of life, and that's when your heart function, your pumping power, they call it ejection fraction, is decreased.
Oh, and there's the heart damage.
Exactly, and that's what leads to a lot of different things: congestive heart failure, that you need oxygen, all those different aspects.
So that time factor is huge, getting you in here and getting that fixed. And I know you can do more than one stent. I know some people need more than one.
Sure.
If they get in there, and I thought this was a very interesting thing for folks who haven't been through it, if they get in there and they see that, okay, this is more serious than a stent, we've got to go in, they can open you right there.
They can. What they'll do is actually, so if you have blockages in several of the arteries, and one stent or even a couple of stents can't fix it, what they do is they actually activate our cardiovascular surgeon team.
Right.
And they will call them, and they will also come in 24/7, and so they'll start prepping the patient. That team gets here, and they do surgery, because it is a life or death situation,
Right.
and that's when you have the bypasses.
Yeah. Well, now, all these things that we've talked about are great heart care issues. What is Mission's goal as far as heart care? I know you would rather not see a lot of people come here with the heart issues. You would like for them to be healthy and not ever have to see them. But what is your goal, long-term goal for Mission? I know you're one of the top heart hospitals.
We definitely are, and we're great at a lot of different things, and I'm kind of bragging a little bit, but for where we are, in terms of Western North Carolina, we provide more services than most hospitals our size in different areas because we specialize in every kind of heart care that you can think of, in all the new technologies. And, you know, we have lots of different procedures that we do emergently that we would like to be able to have more focus on the prevention side of it. We're about 90% full most of the time in terms of our units. So there's a lot of heart emergencies that come here.
Wow.
So prevention is something that the hospital is very focused on. We want to make people healthier. And we want to do it in the right way. So we want to go out and teach people it's important to exercise, it's important to eat right, and know your numbers. In other words, know your cholesterol numbers, know your blood pressure, know your BMI, because lots of times those help us, and they help us to set goals. They help us to become aware, okay, maybe I do need to do this or do that in terms of medications or exercise or diet, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's becoming aware. That's the initial part there that we really want to focus
Well,
on.
you might be able to stop an episode from even happening to you, and if not, at least you know it's a possibility. And then the beauty, I really do believe the beauty of mission is once they're fixed, you're not done with them. There's still education for what's happened to them, how to leave the hospital and do well, how to go into Heart Path so that you continue to work with that patient so that they have not only a good outcome for the next month, but for their lifetime.
Right, and that's what makes our program something that's nationally recognized. It's because we just don't focus on one aspect. We want to make sure that they're not repeat frequent flyers, that they don't come back. We want to keep them healthy.
Right. Is there anything else you want to leave us with this morning?
Another program that we're working on right now with Buncombe County EMS and other EMS agencies is a program to actually take care of people who are having aortic dissections. And this is something that's very specialized.
Now that sounds awful.
So your aorta is one of the major arteries that leaves your heart when you pump blood, and it sends blood everywhere. And what happens when an aorta dissects, the actual lining of it starts splitting apart. And if it were to fully rupture and open up, you literally have minutes to live because it's like springing a leak in a hose. Once you know that you have this and you kind of follow it, to have a system that can actually expedite the care so that paramedics say, hey, this patient could be having a dissection, and then regional emergency departments recognize this. We're setting up a system so that we can have our surgeons, whether it be vascular or our CV, our thoracic surgeons, come in and be ready to receive this patient because, like I said, it's minutes. And so it's important to set up a program that we shave off every little bit of time possible to save more people. More people actually die of this than die of heart attacks because it is so time specific.